Hi, I'm Charlie Wright, founder of BestAgent Marketplace. Since 1999, I've been studying what it is that residential agents actually do. Since that time, I've been increasingly astonished at the levels that some agents will go to help their customers move house. This interview is one of a series I'm doing with some of the most remarkable individuals I've encountered in this industry in that time. For any of you thinking of starting up your own residential agency, I hope you might find some inspiration in some of these stories. Thank you for watching, and welcome to Heroes of Agency. So here I am, early in the morning at Stoke Rochford Hall in Lincolnshire, near Grantham, ready for my first interview for the Heroes of Estate Agency podcast series with Christopher Watkin, who will be here shortly. What an amazing place this is. It goes back hundreds and hundreds of years, been rebuilt a couple of times, and was requisitioned by the War Office during the war, and then after that was used by the National Union of Teachers, and now it's a hotel and wedding venue. So me and my trusty sidekick Bingo will be meeting Chris soon to start what I hope will be a fascinating interview. Yeah, so I'm going to kick it off.
Okay.
Chris, welcome to my first interview with
Pleasure.
People who I consider to be heroes of estate agency.
You make me blush. I'm no hero.
So we're going to have a nice long chat about you.
Okay.
And I'm hoping that our listeners are going to find out about what makes you tick. And let me kick straight off into this. If you can remember this far back, I wanted to ask you, do you remember what you wanted to be when you grew up?
When I was at secondary school, well, if I go back, my family are part of a large family butcher's business, started in 1912 in Grantham. And my great-grandfather started it, and then he had two sons, and they both wanted the business. So they had two shops, so basically the business was split. And then those two, my grandfather and his brother, also had a son each, and the businesses went back down to those, to their sons. So my dad was the third generation.
So do they have a few butchers, like a few outlets, or was it?
At one point, there were 4 Watkins butchers in Grantham, right. 2 owned by one company and 2 owned by the other company, cousins at this point. Now, my dad had 2 brothers, myself and my brother, and if you'd have asked us in the teenage years if either was going to go into the butchery business, the answer would have been a resounding no. But interestingly, our pocket money was stopped when we were 9 years old. Okay.
That focuses the mind, doesn't it? Even as a child.
Well, there's one thing that my parents taught me is quite a well-known family, reasonably well off. Don't get me wrong, the family worked really hard, stupid hours. But if I ever wanted to buy, at the time in the 80s, Space Lego was the thing. Mm-hmm. And a lot of money.
Yeah, I remember.
50 quid. 50 quid was a lot of money in the 80s. Yes. It must be 200 quid now. Anyway, if I wanted anything, they would always go halves, but I'd have to earn it. So at 9 years old, basically child labour was put in washing pots. Initially on a Saturday for a couple of hours when I was 9.
Oh, in the butchers?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Pocket money was stopped, and then, I had paper rounds and things like that, but 9 playing at it, but really 11 or 12 child labour, full day on a Saturday. Went in, washing pots, and basically they employed about 30 people in one shop.
Right. That's a lot.
And they were told that just because my surname was across the door, that cut nothing. Right. And there was 3 or 4 washing up lads, and there was like a hierarchy, a pecking order, and I went in with the lowest of the low, and basically. And
did they treat you as a washer-upper and not as one of the family?
Oh, one of my best times was when it was old Victorian drains, and basically my ankles were held as I was put down the drain to scoop out basically the detritus of a butcher's shop in the drains. And I can still remember that smell to today. Okay. And then the chief butcher and the chief baker. You know, as you get wet cloths and then spin them round,
Yeah,
and then flick them.
Oh.
Well, let's just say this is that I looked like I had ringworm. I don't know what. Well, basically, my left arm was covered in
welts.
Welts, that's the ones. And my parents thought it was awfully funny, but that was just the nature of the game. Oh, and taking pig's eyes and basically anything that you would think is disgusting on a pig, and serving it up and giving it in a bath or something. That's just part of the ritual of being a washing up lad.
What a memorable. And do you have fond memories of it, or was it pretty? Yeah,
adored it. I got to about 14 or 15 and I was bored of washing up, so I got a promotion to serving in the shop on a Saturday.
Okay.
But again, there was a hierarchy there with the part-time girls.
Mm-hmm.
There was often 5 or 6 girls, and not often a lad. But I went in, and again, I went in at the bottom, no airs or graces.
Right.
You'd have to do the crap jobs. But what it did teach me is that hard work is everything. You can't get everything in this world without hard work, and it surprises me that I think an awful lot of people today think that they look at the people they look up to in this world, like famous sports stars or famous business people or famous artists, and they, I often have conversations of people when they ring up and says, "Chris, I want to set up an estate or letting agency," and I say, "Yeah, I can guarantee you will grow your business by 20-30% a year, absolute minimum, but you have to wait a year before that kicks in. But after that, 20-30% every single year." Yes, but is there a shortcut? And there is no shortcut. They have the audacity to think that the people they look up to in this world, the Alan Sugars, the sports stars, the famous artists who've put the busking in and put the time in, but they haven't got to put the time in themselves. And I think that is I think that we are in a society that in the last 15 or 20 years has steadily grown that we want everything on demand. And if you think about it, we've got I'm in my 40s, likewise yourself, Charlie.
Mm-hmm.
And if you roll the clock back 20 years, the difficult things are like going out on a date or asking someone out, and you have to go, it was all a bit, difficult.
You have to ring their house and their parents would answer, say, "Can I talk to so and so?"
Yeah, or you have to ask a friend of a friend, and it used to come back and said, "So and so fancies you,"
My mate fancies you, yeah.
And then if you didn't, you looked a prat and you felt really stupid. But now it's all swipe right for love, isn't it? And then when you look at TV and everything is now, and we binge watch. Yeah. When Ant and Dec comes on, because I've got a real soft spot. I know they're not on at the moment, but when Saturday Night Live, that's my trash TV. There's not much trash TV I like, but I do like Saturday Night and I almost pause it for 15 minutes so I can scroll through the adverts.
Oh yeah, I hate those adverts.
And I think we as a society have learned to want things now. But and we're used to apps, and we're used to computer programs, and we're used to, let's be honest, Uber's amazing, isn't it? But if you want to build relationships, which at the end of the day is what business is about, especially a estate and letting agency, there's no app to build trust. You have to earn it. Yeah. And it really is just hard work and doing the right sort of work, smart work.
So going back to the question, you say you spent 4 or 5 years being dunked headfirst in the drain.
Yep, and then
pelted with wet
in the shop,
cloths, and then in the shop, and serving up pig's eyes in baps and all that kind of fun stuff. But so, what were you dreaming of being at that point? When you thought to yourself, when I grow up?
Went to a local grammar school, and there was a cadet force, and
I did that.
Yeah, quite enjoyed that, and always thought to myself that potentially going into the RAF was something.
Yeah.
I didn't look at the butchery business as a business to go into. It looked too much like hard work.
Or there's another way of putting it, isn't it? There may be easier ways to make a living.
my parents would go in at that time at probably, well, my dad would go in at 6 in the morning, and I wouldn't see him till 6 at night.
Yeah.
You know, and he was making sausage rolls all day, which means he was leaning over a bench, and it really messed his back up.
Right.
Something rotten. And I just thought to myself, that doesn't flick my switch.
Yeah.
Don't mind going in there, doing my bit. It's great, very proud to have a name across the door. So I thought to myself, RAF, that seemed, I quite like doing cadets. And I was in the CCF. We went to a few, you know, when you go out on a
It's
camp.
the combined cadet force,
Yes.
isn't it? CCF, yeah.
Yeah. And then I thought to myself, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And to be honest with you, I think we put an awful lot of pressure on youngsters to know what they want to do at such a young age.
Right. But did you have any dreams, like even like, yeah, I don't know, a sports star or a?
No, I just was
Yeah,
being a teenager. Being a teenager, just getting on with life.
Right.
I knew damn well I'd never be a pilot. I mean, I was in the CCF pilot training, but I was so rubbish at it. My coordination, you know as well as I do, you being a pilot, you fly airplanes, is that you've got to do something with your eyes and your arm, and your elevators have got to go the other way. Well, I was just all over the bloody place.
Okay, all right.
And then I did go on a week on gliders, and they grounded them one day before the end of the course, before I was going to go solo. Who knows where I could have been if I'd have gone solo.
Oh,
I could have.
Why did they ground them?
I think there was cracks in the fuselage, something rubbish like the airframe.
And you never. Do you know, I had a similar story because when I was in the CCF, one of the things I did was I went and I spent a week with the Royal Green Jackets in Winchester when I was 16, and we trained to do the parachute jumping. We were there for a whole week. We did all the training to do the static line, where you jump out and the parachute's attached to the plane, so that it's as you jump out.
It's brilliant.
And on the day we were supposed to jump, the wind was too high, and we never got to do it. And I've never done a parachute jump since. And as a pilot, I probably should. It's a handy skill to have.
It's so good fun to do. You must do it. It's very good fun.
Okay.
Anyway, and then all of a sudden, do they still do work experience in secondary schools?
I don't know.
Do they? They do. Well, anyway, I put my name down to go to a school. I don't know why I wanted to go to a school. It looked like an easy option.
But for work experience?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Tick a box.
Okay.
This was 1987. So I was at the end of my 5th year, which I think is year 11 in new money.
It's the year Top Gun was released.
Is it? There you go. Turn and burn. And what was interesting? Anyway, there was no places in schools.
Right.
But there was this place called an estate agents and surveyors.
Okay.
And do you want to go there? And I went there on the first day, and that's the first time I had coffee.
So how old were you?
16.
Okay.
And let's be honest, we've all had work experience people in our offices, and there's only so many times you can make the coffee and get underneath people's feet. So he said, well, we've got this chap called Nick Musson, who's a surveyor, and he couldn't have. He seemed really old at the time, but now knowing how old he is, he must be only in his mid-50s now. But he was much,
Right.
And he had this red Vauxhall Nova.
Okay.
Basically, he razzed around the countryside. You went to some old lady's house, and you'd have a quick look round, get your protometer, your damp meter out, and put it in the wall. Have a cup of tea, have a look round, get a measurement round, say, all right, sweetheart, see you on. And you jump in the next one, write a few notes, and razz off to the countryside, playing great stereo music to the next one, and you do exactly the same. I did that for 2 weeks, and I thought to myself, that's amazing. You get paid to go around the countryside, have cups of tea, and you get to see houses. And let's be honest, everyone loves houses, don't they? So I thought to myself, that could be what I would want to do. And my parents parents said, well, you've got to go and get a qualification. So I decided that chartered surveying was for me.
Right.
So I went to all the universities and basically did my A-levels, got reasonable grades, and got into my choice, which was Sheffield, at the time, Polytechnic.
Yeah.
They don't call them polytechnics anymore.
No. Because polytechnics were kind of seen as second class to universities, weren't they? And they renamed them all universities, yeah.
So I went to Sheffield Poly to do a surveying degree.
Right. Fun times?
Oh, brilliant.
Student stories?
Oh, yeah.
Do you ever get arrested?
in Sheffield, they don't do it anymore because unfortunately someone died. But they
Dread to think what's coming next.
in the first or second week of October or November, they had something what's called the pajama jump. And basically,
Shouldn't laugh if someone died, but it just sounds ridiculous.
yeah, well, basically, what you've got to do is that women have got to dress up in men's night gear, and men have got to dress up in women's. And basically, I lived in a house full of 6 women.
Okay.
There were 6 women and myself.
Sounds like Saturdays at the Butcher's.
Yeah, it was. But I tell you what, you didn't get on the wrong side of these. Anyway, they decided on this Saturday to make me up like hell, with a wig and stockings and everything. It's the only time I've dressed up as a woman one day, and there is a photograph somewhere.
Oh, I've got to find
the
that.
wife has seen it. And basically, I walked in. You know what students are like, drinking much cans of Stella, and someone walked in and said, "Who's the fat bird in the corner?" I genuinely think it was. Well, the reason someone died is that basically they got so absolutely inebriated that they went to sleep in the garden, and they died of hypothermia.
Oh,
rest their
no.
soul. But there you go. These things. But yeah, I mean, lots of beers, lots of fun. Learned how to be a surveyor.
Mm-hmm.
Had a year out in industry.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Where did you got placed somewhere? Or?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, this was 92, which was, let's be frank, a pretty bad marketplace.
That was when we crashed out of the ERM, wasn't it?
Yes, so there was no jobs going around. I nearly got a job with British Rail. Again, who knows? I was down to the last few to be a charter surveyor with British Rail, which meant I could have been designing HS2 now.
Oh, my goodness.
But anyway, didn't get that. So I ended up at a local estate agent's in Grantham.
Okay.
Unpaid. That learnt me a lot. Unpaid for the year. And was half estate agency, half surveying.
And can you remember, did it feel like work, or did it feel like you were learning and therefore you were getting something from it?
I think it was both. I knew damn well that...
Did it bother you that you weren't paid? Did they exploit that? Or actually was it proper training where you're in there and you're learning a real hands-on-the-job skill? I
think, again, that's an interesting question, training or learning. I think they're both, and doing, it's all the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, when you leave university or school, you might be trained in the technicalities of doing anything. Just like you could go on a negotiator course and learn the technicalities of learning how to be a negotiator. But it doesn't teach you the people skills of caring, empathy, understanding. And, you know, those are the skills. You can't learn that
from a book, can you?
You can't learn it from a book. You can't get a degree in it. You have to learn it. And again, my thoughts on these, looking at millennials, is some of them want to go too fast too soon. When in reality, sometimes in life, if you want to go fast, you have to play it slow.
I think that's very much down to how their expectations were set. So, to a degree, it's not their fault that they have those expectations.
I hate the word blame. In fact, I ban that word in my household. I use the word cause. And I think a big thing of it is the way these children were brought up by their parents. You know,
you can be anything you want. You can have anything you want.
Oh, you know, how many times have you seen awards or medals for 8th place? You know,
that was a big mistake.
Well, there's no award. You don't get an award for coming second. You know,
it's rewarding mediocrity.
I asked 4 estate agents out, and you were number 2. Oh, yeah, great! I've got half a listing.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way in this world, and I think if we can, I don't know why that happened, but I think we, as a responsibility as employers, have to fill that gap with these millennials.
And when you were doing this placement, this internship, do you remember enjoying it? Was it? Or did
it was good fun. It was good fun. I actually met my wife there.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, she was a secretary there.
Amazing.
She was secretary to one of the surveyors, Joanne, and we kind of rubbed each other up the wrong way, but we got on quite well. And she lived on the same road. She lived in Grantham, but the road was would go out to my house in the villages. So every couple of days, I'd pick her up or drop her off. But again, nothing was happening. You know, she's slightly more mature than myself. She's 5 years older than me, so didn't even come across my radar. I had a soft spot for her. Interesting, when I went back to university, we used to write to each other every single week.
How lovely.
Again,
Yeah,
no relationship there.
It's before email, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. Good old letters, eh?
I remember.
But yes, coming back, you asked me, did I feel like I was working? Again, I was only 20 years old, and it was just pleasure to be involved. Did I have an issue with it not being paid? No, I was just chuffed to bits to actually be able to finish my degree and get something done. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to finish it.
It's the opportunity to get involved, isn't it? And to learn what you can't be taught in a classroom. Because there's so much controversy around unpaid internships now that it's seen as exploitation. And I think there are companies that do sometimes exploit those guys, but at the same time, I know lots of young people who have gladly taken unpaid work because they know it's a foot in the door and a step up on the ladder they want to get onto.
Interesting. I had a family member who did some qualifications, medical qualifications, but needed to do some practical stuff as well. And it's interesting that we as people are more than happy to pay out to be educated to a university and pay out. But as soon as we get some experience, we feel we have to be paid.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you're thinking, again, I'm sure you'll bring me back, isn't it interesting that when someone goes for a job interview, the person being interviewed says, what can you give me? What do I get? As opposed to, what can I do for you?
It's a wonderful podcast where Eric Schmidt, the CEO of Google, gets interviewed by Reid Hoffman, who's the founder of LinkedIn, about how he ended up starting at Google. If you want to listen to it, it's called the Masters of Scale podcast by Reid Hoffman. Into Eric Schmidt. It's a fascinating story where Eric Schmidt said, I was a big corporate guy. Someone asked me to go and see these guys. I really had no interest but I went as a favor. And he said what shocked him was the interview was completely back to front from how he expected it to be, and he was intrigued and he joined. A fascinating story that is worth listening to. But I totally see that point. I always see, for example, when someone accepts a job offer from me, I feel fortunate and lucky that I've attracted that person to work for me and that they've chosen to invest their career with me. So it's got to be about what can they get from working for you as much as the other way around.
Surely we work for our staff don't work for us.
Yeah. It's got to be a mutually beneficial. It's not just about the money. It's got to be a mutually beneficial relationship where actually both you and your team feel that they're working towards something worthwhile and they're growing, they're getting something out of it other than just a pay packet.
Well, fascinating thing is the self-employed model is quite big at the moment in a state agency. Hub. Some people call it the self-employed model. Some people call it the associate model. Some people call it the hub model.
The upside is the sort of flexibility and quality of life that they get, which they don't get in a fully employed role.
Well, I'm looking at it more from the point of view of the person who runs the hub. Mm-hmm. And I've had loads of conversations with people, being the lucky position I'm in the industry. And one of the things I think a lot of hub people go wrong with is they think the more of the commission I can give back to the associate or the self-employed agent, the more likely they will stop with me. And I've actually disagreed with that, in the fact is that this is where I think the Keller-Williams model is good. I think they could implement it a lot better, but fundamentally the Keller-Williams model from America is I'm the center boss, but I'm not actually the boss. I'm basically working for you, and I'm a trainer, but more importantly a mentor. And I think associate bosses need to become what could be best described as like a leader, because we as human beings craved to be someone to protect us, to be our leader. That's why we like government. That's why we like bosses. That's why we want kings and queens. The deal is, because if you go back to caveman times, the leader of the tribe got all the best food, the best women, the best everything. The deal was they had to protect us. And I think that's what we as relationships with working for someone is, we'll give you our time and our effort, but you have to protect us. Now, in caveman times, that was very much food, shelter, and warmth. Now, the old Maslow's triangle, it's now a more emotional support and guidance. And I think that's where
mentorship.
mentorship, leadership.
Yeah.
Just be.
I saw your interview with that chap from Keller Williams. You were in their offices. He's an impressive, nice guy. And you asked him a question about why did he do this? Is it just for the money? And actually, it seemed like a genuine reply to him that no, I like helping people and I like creating.
Yeah, you've always got to. I think it's a Richard Branson phrase. You've got to create an environment where they can train them up to leave, but they don't want to leave. And I think that's the missing part on this associate model, is support and guide them, but make them. And this is something which I've learned. I'm prepared to. I'm happy to say it, but I'm actually a Freemason,
right?
Which is generally, a lot of people say, well, it's funny handshake clubs and things like that. Yes, it's funny handshakes. Yes, we have ceremonies and things like that. No, we don't have any dead goats or anything like that. It is just a great organisation, and of a bunch of blokes that get together once a month and have good fun, camaraderie, fellowship. But the interesting part is that it's the ceremony itself is like a play on life, and it's very structured. And you go there, and it lasts 2 hours, and you go downstairs, and then you have like a dining room downstairs, and you have a few beers and a few beers. And one thing I learned was that there's this young lad that, well, he wasn't young, he was in his 40s, had joined us, but no one was interacting with him.
Okay.
And what we decided, a few of us at our end of the table who are same sort of ages, is that sometimes just going to something because you have to go to it, like the Masonic meeting, is not that interesting. So you almost need something else, a juxtaposition, something else to do that brings us together. And we've set up this curry club where once every 6 or 7 weeks, it's a complete opposite. So, the Masonic Masons is very structured, the ceremony. What's this curry club is just generally 10 blokes that just drink beer and have and goad each other on the hottest curry we can have.
Sounds like student days again.
Yeah, but what it's taught me is, coming back to the associate model, is that if you are going to go, whether it's self-employed or whether it's an associate model, the boss has to create an environment that people want to turn up to, and it isn't just a case of I pay you a check and you do this work for me. And I've had some interesting chats with millennials, and they don't want just paying; they want an experience.
Yep.
So surely, my advice to bosses is hold some of the money back that you would normally pay out in commission, and take them all out for a beer and a curry, or actually ask them, what do you want to do this month?
Yeah.
We've got a budget of 500 quid. Do you want to go paintballing? Yeah. Do you want to go to the spa? What should we do? Where you bring everybody together.
Do you know who was the king of doing that? I mean, they took it, the Foxtons back in the 90s. The Foxtons, aware of these? The Foxtons trips? Oh my God, they were infamous. What went on the Foxtons trips stayed on the Foxtons trips, and there was nothing that didn't happen on those trips. They would go skiing in Chamonix. They'd take the whole company for a weekend, and they would come back and they'd be hungover the whole following week. But the stories from those, but that was the culture. But you wouldn't leave, would you? No, my God, the culture of Foxtons was, back in those days, I had a lot of really close friends, schoolmates who worked at Foxtons. They were quite senior at Foxtons in those times. In fact, one of my best mates who became a business partner of mine was, he worked directly for Peter Rawlings when Peter Rawlings was managing their South Ken office. And then this guy went to manage the Notting Hill office. But the culture was, it was almost cult-like.
Do you think Foxtons have lost that? I mean,
definitely. Oh no, of course they had, and they lost it the day John Hunt left. It all fed down from him. And I had a girlfriend, and I got her a job at Foxtons a long time ago. And I remember after 3 months, she came back home one evening crying, going, "I hate this. It's all just about making money." And I said, "Okay, well, you've got a choice. Either make some money back, because they do offer, if you do well, you'll earn a lot of money, or leave." And this is when my first involvement with agency was. She said, "Well, this is actually a really interesting story. This is before internet, before email, and this is when applicants."
Was there such a time?
This is when applicants walked in off the street or picked up the phone. It was the only 2 ways they got.
Next year, we telling me you used to advertise in the newspaper.
2 ways. Now, what she said was that she was working in the South Ken office. This is 1993, right? And the property market was doing well in London those days, and they had lots of applicants. And she said, "Oh, okay, all right. I'm gonna give it my best shot, and I'll let's make some money out of this. I'll embrace the culture, and let's make some money." And I remember talking to her about how her days were going. She's like, "Oh, we get lots of these time wasting applicants." And I remember my advice being to her, "Well, when someone walks in off the street, be the first one up to greet them, and if they aren't a desperate hot applicant, introduce them to a colleague. When the phone rings, be the first to pick it up, and if they aren't a desperate hot applicant, give them to a colleague. If you're saying that there's more than enough of those hot ones, don't waste your time on the other ones." 3 months later, she broke the record for exchanges and had 21 exchanges in 1 month.
Wow.
That's what she said. And that was my very first, it was
Quite a simple thing to do, isn't it?
It was just like, if they're going to take your time, give them to someone else. If they're ready to move now, deal with them. And I don't know how I got into that. But yeah, so it was talking about the cult of the company trip. So what you were saying about doing things. They took it to extremes, but it was very effective as a bonding mechanism. But
yeah, but it's like the army. It's like doing the army. Your sandwiches just turned up.
We'll bring it over here. Oh, hey. Oh, thanks. So actually, it kind of brings me on to can I move on to my next question, if I may? For the benefit of those people who don't know you, and for the benefit of those of us who do know you but just still don't really know the answer to this question, what do you do?
What? When you say what do I do?
What do you now do in the industry? And I know there's more than one thing, more than one answer to that question, but what's your business involvement? We're all very familiar with you. I met because I came aware of you on LinkedIn because of your videos, and then got in touch and we hit it off, and we've been meeting quite regularly since then. But I'm still not 100% clear.
How I earn my money?
Or
what do I do? Or both?
Both.
Okay. I am a freelance property market researcher for estate agents and letting agents.
Okay.
Savills back in the 80s had set up a research department to produce written reports about the London and wherever their offices were, property market.
Yeah.
Why do you think Savills, at the time it might have only been 100, 200 grand, but now spend millions of pounds. Why do you think Savills have a research department? Well, they have a research department to make themselves look good. They produce content which is compelling, interesting, and educational to the people that read it. If you read a Savills report, it doesn't talk about them. It doesn't talk about their firm and their services. It talks about the one thing that homeowners and landlords are interested in, which is if you're in Fulham, they produce reports about the Fulham property market. And basically, in a nutshell, that is what I produce for an awful lot of estate agents and letting agents around the UK, because they can't afford their own research department. Now, how I got into that's a completely different story.
Go on, love to hear it. While I eat my sandwich.
Okay. I worked for most of my years for the Halifax, and my last job with the Halifax was running their third largest branch in the UK, which was Nottingham City Centre. Massive operation. This would be 2009, 2010, so the market had gone belly up, but we were still turning over 50, 60 grand a month in
sales or lettings or both?
Sales.
Okay.
A little bit of lettings, probably 10 grand a month lettings.
So you were the branch manager of the sales office?
Of the whole lot.
So you were doing valuations yourself?
No, I had two and a half valuers.
All right. So you were just managing the office?
Yes.
And how big was your team in that office?
Total of about 12 people.
All right.
Nice little operation. Really enjoyed it. And if you recall, 2009, 2010, that's when the Halifax went belly up.
Yeah.
And they sold off their estate agency arm to LSL for £1. And they gave, working for the Halifax, if you got made redundant, you would have an enhanced package. Redundancy package. Which basically worked out at 4 or 5 times what the statutory stuff was. And what LSL did, what Halifax did, is they gave them enough money to make a good chunk of the staff redundant. So LSL bought it for £1, allegedly. I don't know that for a fact.
But took on the liabilities of those.
But took on the liabilities.
Right.
And the deal is that if they made the people redundant, they could use that money to pay the people off. But if they didn't make them redundant, they could keep half the money and send half the money back. So anyway, we didn't know this at the time. So LSL took over. We rebranded to one of the LSL brands. There was already Your Move and Retrains in Nottingham, so we got rebranded to one of their smaller brands. And boss came in after 5-6 months saying, you're going to have to cut out 5 members of your staff. So I made them all redundant, and then on the day that I made them all redundant, he came in at lunchtime and took me off to the coffee shop and made me redundant.
Did you know that was coming?
No.
What was that like?
Felt like my foundations of my world had come away. Not very nice. So it made me question whether I was worth.
Oh, really? You undermined your own self-worth almost.
Very much so.
Oh, how horrible. Of course it would.
It's the first time. It's happened twice, but that was the first time it happened. It really did knock me for 6.
Yeah, I bet.
And interestingly, it's very easy to say this now, but if there's anyone going through that at the moment, sometimes a door has to close for another one to open. And I'm the sort of person that doesn't dwell on things, but it kind of blows up, and you begin to doubt yourself and your worth, and sometimes you have to go away and sit in a cave and lick your wounds, haven't you? So went into the job market and got a job for an agency in Loughborough, and that was a scream. It was a year, but there was 4 of us in the office, but 3 of us had the job title manager.
Okay.
So none of it.
And was it hard to find that job, or did you find
No, it was quite easy to find that job.
And was it a step backwards, or actually was
Okay,
sideways?
I had a very nice branch manager title, but fundamentally I was the world's highest paid negotiator.
Were you doing valuations or just being a negotiator?
No, basically it's because they employed a chap called Tony, top bloke. They employed him at the same time. He was the valuer,
Mm-hmm.
and we both had manager in the title. So basically I was managing some pens. Oh, and there was another negotiator in the office as well. 3 managers, all chiefs and no Indians.
You were calling applicants and you were doing viewings.
Yeah, back to real basics.
Right. Okay.
Anyway, it got to I was in my early 30s. I thought to myself, I can't be here. I can't stand this. And quite frankly, it got to a point where you can't have 3 managers and 1 negotiator in the office not knowing where everyone stands. Human beings like a pecking order and a hierarchy. And went back into the job market and got a job for Belvoir as their national sales manager.
Franchises. Okay.
And this comes to the point where we found this. So I joined Belvoir, who just happened to be in my hometown, in 2011. And I can't sell anything if I don't believe in it. And at the time, there was about 125, 130 offices. So I thought to myself, I asked the boss, can you give me who's the best performers? Who do I need to go and see that I can almost bottle the magic juice?
And Belvoir's lettings only, right?
At the time they were.
Right.
Which franchisees can I go to and find out what they're doing differently to others so I can bottle it, and then it will help me sell more franchises for you? Because for the previous 12, 18 months, they'd hardly sold, I think they'd probably sold 1, might have been 2.
Oh, really? What, in 18 months?
Yeah.
So they're doing 1 a year?
Yeah, it wasn't very good. So...
And can you say, how much were they? How much did a franchise cost in those days?
£22,500 and 12% of your turnover.
Okay. And $22,500 was up front, or did they finance that for you?
No, you had to find it yourself.
Okay.
So basically, at the time, you had to, with the way that you'd have to find 60 or 70 grand cash, and borrow 60 or 70 grand cash. So basically, you had to look someone in the eye and tell them to put their life on the line, give away all their life savings, and put their house on the line.
Which is why you had to believe in what you're doing, because
Yes.
you couldn't possibly sell that to someone knowing that they might fail. Or, yeah.
And what I did is I went out and I looked at the best performers, the ones that were actually growing their agency.
Yeah.
And the first guy I went to was a guy called Simon in Telford and his lovely wife. And they did in a cold start 75 lets from a cold start in 12 months. When the average was probably nearer...
That's like 1.5 a week. That's...
Yeah, well, the average was probably nearer 20 for a cold start.
Right, okay.
So I asked him, what did you do? He says, well, I took newspaper advertising.
Okay.
And I said,
What year was this?
2011.
Okay.
I said, well, newspaper advertising doesn't work in lettings and estate agency. He says, well, I had no properties to put in it. So what I used to do, because the page was so cheap, I had to take it. I used to write stories of how I'd helped landlords either find houses or give advice on what to buy, or funny stories of what they did, how they'd help tenants. So that's fascinating. Thank you very much. Then I went to a chap called Richard in Northampton, and he'd been writing a blog for a few years, and basically in the last 2 years he'd brought on 185 managed properties
in 2 years,
using his blog. So I said, so come on then, what do you do? What he says is, he said 4 years previously, he every single weekend when his football team weren't playing, I think it was something like that, he would write down a huge 2,000 word gutsy article about what was happening in the Northampton property market, what 2-bed semis were selling for compared to last month, how 2-bedroom semis in one area were doing better than the other, what was happening to rents, what was happening to yields. And this would be a lump of a report. And he set up the Northampton property blog, and he used to chuck it out on that and then spread it out a bit on social media. He says, I started doing it and I got absolutely nothing from it for months and months, but slowly but surely I got traction, and landlords were interested in it because I was talking about the thing that they were interested in, which is what's happening to the Northampton property market. And then landlords were ringing him up all the time, and then eventually what happened was, because again, he did this, but a lot of agents do this. They say, if I ever see something that's a real cracker, I'll give you a call. Look, cracking deal. But the problem is he became a victim of his own success. And when he did see an absolutely cracking deal, he was spending all his time ringing these people up. So just one day, after a couple of years, he said, you know the blog you originally contacted me on because I was talking about the Northampton property market? From this point on, all the deals I'm just going to put online. And if you see it, it's up to you to crack on. So if you miss it, you snooze, you lose.
You snooze, you lose, yeah. Do you know which film that's from?
No, go on.
Have you not? Okay, it's from Indecent Proposal.
Right, there you go.
Robert Redford, Demi Moore, and Woody Harrelson. And if you haven't seen that film, you must watch that film.
I will watch that film
because it's actually in the context of property that quote comes from.
You snooze, you lose.
And Woody Harrelson is told he's just lost his home. Right, he's an architect. He's designed his own home. It's half built.
Yeah,
can't keep up mortgage payments on it. And his mortgage broker just looks and says, sorry, snooze, you lose. And the Indecent Proposal doesn't spoil the film, right? Is that Robert Redford is a billionaire. They go to Vegas to try and win the money to keep their house, right? It's desperate at times. And then they get there and Robert Redford basically says, I'll give you $1 million for one night with your wife.
Isn't this the same story as Pretty Woman?
No, not at all.
All right, go on.
It's because Demi Moore and Woody Harrelson's characters are deeply in love. They were students together. They are fairy tale, and suddenly they're faced with this dilemma. Like he's offering us $1 million, which saves our home, our dream home. And they say no first of all, but then you've got to watch the film to see what happens. It's a great film, and it actually gets better with time. And I think it's one of Woody Harrelson's best performances.
There you go.
This guy just slowly. It's a great film. Sorry. So yeah, you snooze, you lose. This guy.
Yeah, and basically what was happening is that he brought on 185 managed properties in the 2 years after he was So for 2 years he was just doing the written articles, and then for the next 2 years he was doing the written articles and the buy-to-let deals and sharing out on social media.
Okay.
And
Early days for social media.
yes, yet he grew his managed stock in the 2 years by 185 managed properties, and he knows damn well that at least 85% of them came about because of doing the blog and the buy-to-let deals.
Okay.
But the important thing with the buy-to-let deals is that there were properties that were on the market with a competitor.
Okay.
And this is something which really screws up agents' heads, because one of the big things that I recommend is that agents highly recommend other agents' properties to buy if they're a genuine buy-to-let deal. If you want to attract landlords, stop talking about yourself or your firm or your services and talk about stuff that people are interested in.
So explain how that. Yeah, I can understand. So the short-term view is, why would I sell someone else's properties for them?
Well, because everyone's out to get what they want for themselves.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If you help enough people get what they want, you will get something back in return. Give as receive.
All right.
And then come back to the story, because I'm sure we can look at this in greater detail later in the chat. There was a guy in Southend that got 23 managed properties in 1 month from social media. And I said, well, social media doesn't get you 23 managed properties in a month. What he had he wrote this 8-page report, and really it was just 8 pages of text on what Microsoft Word.
Okay.
About how the Tilbury docks would affect the Southend property market.
Okay.
And it was a nice report. It was very blocky. It was very heavy.
Mm-hmm.
But he had this apprentice, and he'd spend months connecting up with everyone in the locality, because on LinkedIn you can target people by location.
Right.
And you send connection requests and they'll connect up with you. And basically he went into every single of his records and sent them an email saying, I've written this report on how Tilbury will affect the Southend property market. Now, interestingly, the vast majority of those 23 properties didn't come directly from landlords, but came via solicitors and accountants, because he sent the report to solicitors and accountants, who tend to be the people on social media. And because this wasn't a glorified, look at me, look how big my what's name is and how wonderful I am as an agent, it was genuinely an 8-page report on how these docs would affect the local property market.
So back to the question.
They passed it on. The accountant passed it on to his or her clients.
Yeah.
Why? Because it made the accountant look good.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so and this is answering the question: what is it you do now?
Well, this is how
you got into it.
This is how I got into it, and basically,
so you saw all these stories. How did you? I mean,
so what happened was
friends of friends, or
no? Well, I saw these things, and I thought. So I went to the board and said, I think I could systemize this. Remember, my job was not to look after existing franchisees. My job was to bring new ones in.
Right.
But if I could prove the concept, I could sell more franchises. So they gave me some offices to keep me quiet.
Okay.
And a year later, we got great growth from them.
Oh, they actually gave you some offices to manage.
Not to manage, but to use I systemized
to trial the technique.
The technique, which I christened landlord farming.
Okay.
It's just that I committed career suicide by saying to the board that I was bored of selling franchises, and this technique worked, and I wanted them to let me loose on the network with it.
Right.
And I was told my job was selling franchises. That's their role. I respect them. I still love them to bits, but that's what they wanted me to do. And don't get me wrong, I was bloody good at it. In 2 years, 9 months, I'd sold, what was it? Just under 30 franchises.
That's nearly one a month. That's nearly one a month. That's amazing.
So that is when I rang the wife up.
No wonder they wanted you to keep doing that.
Yeah. So that's why on the 12th of December, 2013, I rang the wife up and said, I've just handed my notice in. I'll see you in an hour.
And so that was just over 5 years ago.
Yeah. So, and she'd just gone self-employed 3 months before that.
And you didn't consult her on this move. You just she probably knew it was coming.
She knew it was coming. Yeah. And sometimes, I think a lot of us in this world are waiting for the nudge
Mm-hmm.
to make the move,
Yep.
something happen externally. And if this hadn't have happened, I probably would still be there. Don't get me wrong. I love the Belfour network. I love the people there. But I was very much a square peg in a round hole.
Yep.
And I genuinely felt that if I could help agents with this system of landlord farming, of talking about the two things that interest landlords, I know it helps. We'll come on to how it helps vendors because it evolved.
Yeah.
One of the things is that by talking about, landlord farming is a technique where you write about the local property market and then basically share great buy-to-let deals that are on the market with competitors. Rinse and repeat, share on social media, give the articles to the local newspaper, they'll put them in for free, put them onto newsletters and put them through letterboxes or accountants and solicitors.
And this is advice you freely give for free on social media and your YouTube channels.
I have at the time of filming this, which is March 2019, there are 680 videos on my YouTube channel, either interviewing people or talking about the system with lots of training.
Okay, so that is help you're just giving away to the industry.
Yes, so asking what I do.
Yeah.
Let's cut back to the chase. So basically, once a week I will write my weekly article, and then I have a team of 3 writers who will then replicate that story by hand, not electronically, for over 100 locations.
And give me an idea how long is one of those articles that you write?
Between 600 and 800 words long.
Okay.
So they are very wordy. So some people say, are they wordy? Are they too heavy? They're ideal for people who read the Times and the Telegraph, which is the demographic of a landlord and a posh person who owns a posh house.
Right. Yeah,
but you say, but most people won't know me because of my ghostwriting, because I don't talk about it, do I? No. Hence, you wouldn't have asked the question.
Well, this brings me on to the point. So, I mean, you once told me, in fact, before we met, we were on the phone, and you talked to me about how your technique of giving away valuable advice for free had basically become your sole marketing activity, costing you nothing but your time and generating you business.
Yes. So if you look at Chris Watkin, I look like a guy who interviews people in the industry.
And are you happy to share the sort of percentage levels of growth? I mean, how well has it worked for you in terms of the growth of your business?
Would it surprise you that since I've been doing the videos, my growth has stagnated?
How long have you been doing the videos?
2 years.
680 videos in 2 years?
Yes.
That's one a day?
Yes. You haven't even seen the backlog I've got. Over 100. Doing the videos has affected my business.
But you're doing them more than ever.
Yeah. Screwed your head up, hasn't it?
Yes. Is it because you love it?
Up until 2 years ago, I used to use written stuff, and every single article I used to write used to end up, basically, you're all shit estate agents, your marketing's crap, talk about the local property market and you'll win.
Right.
And if you want to talk about the property market, I ghostwrite, but if you don't want to ghostwrite, and if you can't afford me, or I already have someone in your town, because I only work for one agent in one town, here are 20 free templates, which I'm happy to send to you for free. And if anyone's listening to this, I'm more than happy to send them 20 free templates. My email address is christopher@christopherwatkin.co.uk. In the subject line, just put the word 20 stories, and I'll send you 20 templates, and you rotate them every 20 weeks.
Okay. Do you think that's contributed to the stagnating of business growth?
No. I've sent those out to over 300 agents, and I can count on one hand the amount of agents that use them.
Well, that doesn't surprise me, because what I've learned in the last 20 years about agents and their time would explain that.
Okay. I think it's deeper than that. Probably we can talk about that later.
Yeah. But
why
I'm
the videos?
curious.
Because they do cost me money.
Yes, of course they do. You've got the editing but I am curious. I mean, it might be nothing to do with the fact. It might be to do with the market conditions.
Could be.
Right? Because the market conditions in the last 2 years have not got easier, have they?
They haven't. to answer your question, I'm a huge. I follow a lot of people. There's so much information out there in this world. People wanting to teach others, and there's a few people out there that I've cottoned onto a few years ago. One is Gary Vaynerchuk, or Gary V, as he's
I've got a friend of mine who works for him
Amazing.
in New York. Yeah,
And another person called Seth Godin.
I know him very well.
Yeah.
Read
And
his books. I'm reading his latest one. This is Marketing.
yes, very good, isn't it? And interestingly, what Gary says is, don't watch what I do what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, because there's lots of people that just watch this stuff and then they don't do anything about it. And I just took the decision to do it. And interestingly, the reason I started video is, would it surprise you that I was putting a video off for years?
No, I can understand. I mean, I suspect most of us are still doing that, or have done.
Yes.
I certainly have been putting. I've known for years that video marketing is bad, but it's actually difficult to do it well.
It's difficult to do because people are judging someone else's chapter 10 versus your chapter 1.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I've taught over 200 agents because
Yes, that's right. You got courses.
We run courses in teaching people how to do video, and we've taught over 200 agents how to do it. And interestingly, only 40 of them are actually doing it.
Well, I can think of several reasons that would contribute to that.
Okay, fear is the big one.
Yeah,
fear of looking stupid, and we've actually learned a way to ease people in. Get rid of that fear.
Whereas I've come to terms with the fact that I look stupid on video. So
I'm a fat bloke from Lincolnshire with a strange accent. Just deal with it.
Yeah.
And sorry, where were we? Video. So basically, I messed up with some of my clients on the 23rd of December 2016.
Just over 2 years ago.
Yeah, I did something that I shouldn't have done. And one of my clients rang me up and says, "Chris, have you done this?" And I said, "Yes, that's me. I've done wrong. I'm not doing it anymore, and it won't happen again." And I found out that the mistake I'd made was in a few other locations as well. So I picked the phone up to all the clients involved and apologised. None of them had seen it, and it shocked me, kicked me, saying you were flying too close to the Icarus style to the sun.
Are you happy to say what the mistake was or not?
I'd
understand if not. But
I pride myself that I only work for one agent in one town, and there was an agent, a large network approached me, and there was a crossover of not many offices, and I thought if I went for the money, and because I thought to myself, well, I'll just do different work, and someone spotted, and it was obviously not that different because someone said that's one of your articles.
Okay.
So I actually broke the trust of some of my clients.
Yeah. I don't know anyone that hasn't made mistakes.
Only one noticed, and interestingly,
so the other ones that you told, they must have appreciated.
Nothing bad came about from ringing the others because I was genuinely a repentant sinner.
Yeah. And they would have appreciated that call.
Yeah. Even though they hadn't noticed, no one did notice. And interestingly, the one that the client has turned into a really close friend now.
Okay.
From that. So I went down to my garden shed, which I haven't filmed from in about 12 months, but still everyone talks about the red hat. And I just did 5 videos and pushed them out because I didn't know what else to do.
Okay.
And for the first 5 or 6 months, all I did is switch my webcam on my laptop and do just Chris's rants. Okay. And did the same articles, the same stuff that I was saying, you're all shit agents, you should be using articles and talk about the property market. And interestingly, a friend of mine called Stephen Brown, who is quite a well-known estate agency trainer.
I haven't met him, but I know of him,
was coming to Grantham.
Mm-hmm.
because he does training for a big operation in Grantham. But one of the days he works 4 of the 5 days. And he's kicking his heels on one of them. So we met at the pub. He doesn't drink, by the way. He has peppermint tea. And I said, tell you what, why don't I take my mobile phone and a little tripod, and why don't we just interview chatting?
Mm-hmm.
And we just put the film on for 45 minutes, and we talked. And it went down really well. So I interviewed someone else.
And that was how long ago? That was
18 months ago.
Gosh, that recently. You haven't looked back, have you?
Well, it's just slowly grown from there. But the interesting thing is it's opened doors to me in the industry. Like, I wouldn't be sat here. There's some, I won't embarrass with their names, but there's some pretty big names in the industry that wouldn't even give me the time of day when I'd go to a show. But there are people ringing you up asking you to help them write their book, or be part of things.
Well, I mean, the thing that, if I may,
yes,
the thing that really struck me when I first came across you, which was on your videos, first of all, it was your boisterous style, your straight talking. That made it actually very watchable. But secondly, you came across to me, and this is when I didn't know you from Adam. You were just a random bloke on these videos popping up on LinkedIn. That you actually cared about wanting to help people in the industry. You felt that you got something to share that would actually help people to stop the decline in their businesses and help them grow their businesses. Mm-hmm. And also, you were targeting that. My interpretation, this may be wrong, was that you were aiming that at smaller agents, at independents, at owner managers, not at chains or corporates.
No, because I learnt.
Oh, that's going to end badly. You want your 50 minutes of fame, do you? Go on, lie down. So was that the case, or was I?
I learned I learned that my technique needs buy-in from the boss, and it doesn't work very well. It doesn't work very well if the staff don't buy in.
Okay.
Because the problem with the technique of landlord and ultimately landlord and vendor farming is that the lead-in time is a good 9 or 12 months. And employees want to do something on a Monday and get paid for it on the Friday. Yeah. And it's this short-term versus long-term myopic point of view. Yeah. And that's why they're employees, and that's why the boss is the boss.
Yeah.
And it's interestingly, I've worked for a number of chains, and there is only one chain in the UK. When I say chain, it's a 5-office operation.
Yeah.
Where it actually works and continues to work. Okay. In all of the locations, it doesn't work unless the boss is at the front line. Because the boss might be enthused, but the negs or the managers are not. They don't get it that you have to do this in January to get business in December.
So this brings me on to another question that I had for you, which I think it's a really important question for me that I don't think there is an answer to. But in my 20 years of being a service provider to the residential agency industry, and having worked for, I've had almost every brand there is as a client at some point in my life in the last 20 years. So I had the Knight Franks and the Savills and the Hampton Countrywide and Chestertons, Douglas and Gordon, Hamptons, you name it, right? But actually it's ended up being mostly owner-managed independents.
Which makes up the majority of the industry.
It does. And I didn't know that until quite recently, just how much of the majority they make up. But the problem, or the question that I've always been asking at the industry is, why is there such a struggle and so much friction between agents and their movers when actually they both need the same thing? They both need the move to happen, because without the move to happen, the mover doesn't get their new home and the agent doesn't get their fee. So why is it so difficult? Now, one of the facts that's bubbled to the surface is that, and this is just a straightforward fact, it's not a matter of opinion, more than half of vendors choose the wrong agent first time. Right? because they then have to go to a second agent before they will sell.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's just a fact.
Yes, 60%, I
Right.
think, according to right. 60% of properties sell with a second agent.
The collective consumer is unaware of that fact. And I suspect if consumers were aware that more than half of you choose the wrong agent first time, it might alter their approach to who they choose.
That's because estate agents are absolutely appalling at telling their story with their marketing.
Perhaps, but that may also be because their story is an incredibly complicated one. So my question that I want to come to is this. When a friend or a family member comes to you and says, Chris, I need to sell let my house. How do I choose the right agent? What's your answer? So I'm talking about someone that's in a town where you don't know the agent, so you can't give them specific recommendations. But when you are giving advice to a friend or loved one about how they go about choosing the right agent to sell or let their home, what's your answer to that question?
Let's touch base on how it actually works at the moment. In the vast majority of cases, people just ring up the first 3 agents that come into their head, and they choose the person they like the most who's on the sofa.
But how do they select those 3 that they call?
Right. So in the vast majority of cases, the vendor lives in the same town that they operate in. And there's the famous estate agency phrase, boards breeds boards. And because the general public's perception is that all estate agents are the same, then they just ring up the first 3 names that come into their head, because no one's walking around. It's a bit like no one's walking around in their heads saying, if my wife walked out on me tomorrow, I would ring that solicitor. Yeah. If I had was caught by the police doing something strange or naughty, I would go to that particular solicitor. Nobody goes, and it's the same with potential vendors. Nobody's walking around with their head saying, if my husband comes home tomorrow and says we're moving to Droitwich, I'm going to call out this agent, and this agent. And I genuinely believe this is where we as an industry are absolutely appalling, is we don't actually find out how people ask for us. But I've done some homework just asking around friends and family, and people just ring up the first 3 agents that come into their head.
But can I press you for an answer to my question, which is, what's your advice of how to choose an agent to someone you know?
Well, most people choose it is that it's a phrase that Seth Godin does. People like us do things like this. So if you're looking around, you look at all the 3-bedroom. If you live in a 3-bedroom semi, you look at who seems to have most of the 3-bedroom semis. Okay. Hence why Savills of Knight Frank get all the posh stuff, because that's what Knight and Frank.
Okay.
There's not many people out there that would actually go onto Rightmove and work out how many properties a particular agent has, click on sold subject to contract, and work a ratio out. And they certainly wouldn't go out and look on how long it takes to sell a property. Yeah. And then there's websites out there that tell you what percentage of the house sale it sells for and how many they sell, which is great. And don't even get me talking on bloody Rightmove pie charts, market shares.
No. But to me, of the long list of problems that exist in the home moving industry, the biggest one is that the consumer doesn't know how to choose the right agent for them. That is the biggest problem. Now, I don't disagree with the point that the agent...
No, but they all perceive agents to be the same when quite clearly we're not.
That's true, but they've got no way of telling the difference, have they?
No, so therefore it's not for the client to find out, it is for the agents to prove what we do. You know as well as I do, the number of steps involved from putting a house on the market through to exchange must be in the order magnitude of at least 50 steps, if not more. And we as an industry, as an estate, and especially estate agency, we all look and sound the same. If you change the colour of every single estate agency website has a logo at the top with probably 5 different fonts. The Pantone colour is one of 5 primary colours, and it says home, buy, sell, rent, about us, register here, and that on the navigation bar. And it all says, hi, we're an estate agent, we're local people, we know what we're talking about, and this is how wonderful we are, and this is the houses we have to sell. Yeah. And you're absolutely right, Charlie. People don't, have you ever been to a party and someone talks about themselves all night? Yes?
Haven't stayed very long, if that's been the case, but yeah.
What do you think to that person?
Yeah, I get your point.
But so what we as estate agents need to do is tell a different story of how we as an agent, our particular agent, will because you're absolutely right. The job at what someone doesn't want to sell their house. Someone wants just to move on with the next chapter of their life. And our job as estate agents is to help someone move from one chapter of their life to the other. The problem bit in the middle is selling the house. They don't give a flying rat's backside whether it's 50 steps or 100 steps. That's what I pay you for. And the issue is that because we are basically cookie cutter estate agents, homogenized, we all look exactly the same, and we don't tell a story, then the likes of Purple Bricks and their online £1,000 mates is just whack it on Rightmove and off we go. Yeah, but that's not the point. That's probably step 2 of a 10, 20 step thing. And we as agents need to tell that story. But I'll tell you who's the best person to tell the story, not agents, but vendors who've used our services.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think that if you were to ask me why do I think that more than half of vendors choose the wrong agent first time out, it's because of the prevalence of overvaluing, and I don't. Well, I don't want to go into that discussion.
That's greed.
I think that's an oversimplification of what it is. I think it's vendors dreaming of what their next move is. Because if you dare to believe your house is worth what that overvaluing agent tells you, then what you're thinking is, that means I can afford to live in that house.
Right, okay.
So it's not necessarily greed as much as aspiration.
Right, okay. It's amazing. This is a golden line which I've heard in the estate agency for an awful long time. Let's just say you meet the wife or meet the husband, and they meet and they're reviewing the estate agents. And the amount of times I've heard this line, Connells gave me this figure, William H. Brown gave me this figure, an XYZ agent gave me this figure. And it's almost like people's perception is that the estate agent is giving them the money for the house.
Yeah.
And surely, if you've got 2 agents saying a house is worth £300,000 and some guy saying, I can get you 50 grand more, then by the very nature of human beings, 50 grand more means which means you're absolutely right. We can get a better house.
Yeah, which is why I don't think it's fair to call it greed. It's people wanting to, people want to improve and better their lives. And if they meet an agent that seems credible and somehow backs up their higher valuation, it's not unreasonable of them to go, well, do you know what? That's you've just sold us some hope. You've sold us a dream.
Of course you have.
But unfortunately, this is where I think it backfires on the industry, because every instruction you take on that you don't sell costs you time and money and somehow damages your reputation.
Yes, you're taking on a liability.
Right? And it's just costing you time and money until or unless it's sold. Secondly, you're also doing a disservice to that vendor.
Yes,
because if they have to change agent, their house is then seen slightly as second-hand goods, because buyers recognise houses even when they change agents. Right? They do. And I've lost my train of thought now. That happens. Never mind. That's a fascinating topic. But where I wanted to get to with this particular point was, well, let me offer you the answer I give when a friend asks me, how do I choose the right agent? Okay?
You see, I would actually ask the question, do people actually ask that?
I get asked that.
Yes, but you're in the industry.
I know, but I mean, it just serves a purpose of the illustration of my point, right? My answer is, do not instruct any agent where you cannot get the mobile phone number of the owner.
Fair point.
That's the first thing I say. Right?
Well, that's interesting, because when I worked for Halifax, I used to be a bank manager. Because if you wanted to get on in the Halifax, you had to take a step out of state agency and go and do banking to go back in again. So you could road. So if you need a mortgage or a personal loan or a credit card, I'm your man.
Right, okay. But so let me explain the logic behind this, right? The owner of an agency business, sorry, are you not finished?
No, I've not finished.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Because my claim to fame was that I was on the Halifax TV advert with Howard.
Oh, wow.
Yep. I was a token fat bloke. And my point is this: we had to sell current accounts, and let's be frank, getting someone to swap a current account is really hard work. So, and our targets went up when the adverts came on, but the number of people walking through the door, even though we were bribing them with £100 to swap, still didn't go up.
Okay.
So the best way to actually, if you can use the word sell
Mm-hmm.
a current account, is that we had lots of people coming into the bank with their savings. Now, because the only people that used to walk into the bank saying, "Can I have a bank account?" they should have had a T-shirt saying, "NatWest is next door. They've just clobbered me 300 quid's worth of fees."
Okay.
And they're the only ones that used to come in. Do you open? So the way we did the bank account was this: people want to deal with people that they know will care and go the extra mile.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to say, "Mrs. Miggins, you say you trust me with 200 grand of your savings, but you don't bank with me. Okay, what I'm prepared to do is I want to be your bank manager, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you my business card with a direct line to the branch, which is, let's be honest, getting a direct line to the branch is hard work.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the mobile,
Mm-hmm.
but it was a direct line, none of your call centre malarkey. Now, there's certain things I can do and certain things I can't do, but here's a direct line to the branch. And that used to get me current accounts.
I bet it did. Left,
And
right, and centre.
But I tell you now, no one ever used to ring it. But they liked the fact that if there was an issue, they could pick the phone up to the branch manager. And that's why you are so right. That, at 10 o'clock on a Monday night, you will not be able to sort out whether someone's viewing's feedback. But you're just nice to know that it's there.
That's right. And I came up with this idea because, not an idea, it was a conclusion from all the agents that I've worked with, is that nobody cares more and nobody will go to greater lengths to get you through a difficulty in the sale of your house than the person who's going to lose the most.
Indeed, that's the estate agent.
Right? Well, no, it's the owner. That's the point.
Oh,
if you're just dealing with a branch manager or a negotiator, they might lose their commission, but that's only 10% of the fee, for argument's sake, right? Whereas if you're the owner, it's 90% of the fee. You give me 10% of the staff, but so I have witnessed when sitting with agents, the phone rings, vendor rings up, and there's a problem, and the owner says to me, "Charlie, I've got to fix this problem right now."
Yeah, but it's not even 90%. It's the actual vendor that's going to lose the whole sale and the 500 grand to sell their mansion.
The point is, the reason I say do not instruct an agent if you can't get the mobile number of the owner is because that is how you got
You're to use that
in
your marketing. When you do these podcasts and videos out. Great title, that one. That'll get people talking.
To me, and this is a completely impartial, right? I've never been an agent. I've worked with all different kinds of agents, and what I have.
Do you think that matters? Oh, I'm getting it back now.
Well, let me finish my answer to the question first.
Okay,
then. That's what I've seen, is that I have witnessed the owners of businesses go to lengths that their staff won't.
Of course you will, because you've got skin in the game.
So that is why my advice is always don't instruct them. The only exception to that is if the best agent in the town is the branch manager of a corporate, and he or she has got that reputation as being the best, then use them, right? As long as you've got their mobile number. I remember a classic example of that. There was a guy called Philip Stevens, who was the manager of Hamptons International Richmond going back 15 years. He owned Richmond, right? All the others, because I had them as a client. This is a photography and floor plan business. Hamptons, Savills, Knight Frank, John D. Wood, all clients in Richmond. And he had more business than all put together. And I say to him, "Where do you get your business?" He said, "My mobile phone rings. People just say, 'My friend so-and-so said you're the person to talk to.'" He said, "Never have to negotiate on fees. It's 2%. Whatever it was." Yeah, but he had a reputation as being the guy who would not let he would get the deal through no matter what. So that's the only exception to that rule. But generally speaking, it's find an owner, because the owner's got more to lose.
Okay.
And therefore will go to greater lengths. Second thing I would always ask if I was a vendor is I would ask to see proof of your sale to completed ratio.
I agree.
That's more important than the percentage asking price achieved. But the owners don't know that, because they just assume that the first agent they instruct is going to sell a house. That's the assumption.
Well, because everyone's in Happy Valley that they think their house is wonderful and it's going to sell.
Yeah. And there's an agent I know who has consistently achieved more than 90% instructed to sold. And there's a number of reasons he does this. He doesn't overvalue. He will say to someone, "Instruct another agent if you want the higher value. When it doesn't work, I'll be here for you."
So that's another fascinating bit, is how you tackle.
He's been there long enough and has the confidence to say that. He said, "Because look, my track record is this. I have a better track record than them." But he has the highest instructed to sold ratio of anyone I've known in the last 20 years. And he never uses that in his marketing. I don't understand why.
Well, this is interesting, because I was interviewing Nick Neal, the head guy of YouMove.
Yeah, I saw that interview.
And he said that as a group, and there's over 100 franchisees, they have a listing to exchange, which, let's be honest, exchange completion, the same thing. Nearest damn it. 70% across 100 offices.
That's very good.
That's very good.
That is very good. That's very good.
And do you know why? Because the self-employed estate agent does the viewings, does the offers, does everything from start to finish.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think we as an industry are, as soon as we get somewhere quite good, we want our underlings to do it.
Yeah. Which is why, and I think it's okay to instruct an agent that's got underlings as long as the owner is on the phone if you need them. I've got a few more questions here.
Lovely.
I'd love to keep going. So, who is your hero or idol in the industry? Or not in the industry, actually?
Oh.
Who springs to mind?
Idol. Gary Vaynerchuk.
Okay.
Combination of Gary Vaynerchuk and Seth Godin.
Okay.
Has...
Those two are chalk and cheese, aren't they?
Yes.
In their style.
In terms of their approach to giving without receiving, being interesting, and marketing. Because let's be honest, that's what I do. I'm a marketeer.
Okay, right. Okay, cool. And thinking back to when, in December 2013, you walked out of employment for the last time into self-employment, has it turned out how you expected?
I took a business coach on 9 months in, and was with John for a good 3 or 4 years. And we're not officially together now. We kind of help. We barter with each other. I help him with his marketing, and he helps me with my head. I think for the first couple of years, my purpose of doing landlord farming was to prove to everybody else that the system worked. To my old bosses, to the industry, to basically anyone that was prepared to listen. I think there's a lot of estate agents out there who leave their firms, and the thing is that they're running away from something, or that they are trying to prove something. And something quite interesting happened 3 or 4 years ago, was that I think we as children are programmed to look for love and affection and affirmation from our parents. My brother went into the business of the butchery, and in teenage years, my parents were very much involved with him at the weekends. Sunday was our only day off, because he was into motocross, and our families are really into biking and all motorsports. Generations have gone back, generations and generations. But I wasn't interested in that. So again, as a child, you see the 1 day a week that your parents have free, and they were spending all their time, as a child, your perception is that they were spending more time with my brother, and therefore, as your perception is that they love him more. So because I was going to university, and difficult to say this one, I was always trying to prove how good I was doing in my job to my parents, and that was quite difficult, because they didn't. All they understood was making pork pies. It's a massive business. 40, 50 full-time equivalent, big operation. Yeah. And my brother eventually ended up going into the business, and it made me realise that, interestingly, I had quite a big argument with my parents, again around the same sort of time, when it came to their future and what they were going to do with the business and the family assets. Interesting, I had it's quite a chat where my father turned around to me and, because my parents always say, treat you equally, but my perception was that it wasn't, and the way they were going to split up the family land and building plots, because their parents had some, it just didn't seem fair to me. My father turned around to me and said, well, if you say any more, you'll be disinherited. And I thought to myself, and I just turned around to him and said, well, that's your choice. You do whatever you like with it. It's your money, but I'm not, for God's sake, don't ram it down my neck that you treat us equally. And interestingly, from that, I was talking to my brother, and his perception is that my parents loved me more. What it all came about is that if you go looking for something, parents was fine. We sorted that out really quickly. But about 3 years ago, I stopped looking for affirmation and telling my parents what I was doing. And as soon as I stopped looking for it, I received it.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And that conversation with my father changed I think, again, I don't know what your relationship with your parents also were. I don't know if you still got them, but is that there comes a point where the boy turns into a man, and you become equals, and eventually you become the leader of the family, and that's the way families go. But that was the time where I turned from a boy to a man, where I was not subservient to them, and it did change our relationship so much more for the better. And then with talking to my brother, and it comes back down to what do I do this for? Is I am very much a people person, and I'm in a lucky position where financially my article writing only takes up so much of my time, and I could spend my time badgering people, ringing up people, but it's so much easier if they come to you as opposed to you go to them. And I found something doing these videos where if you actually, again, there's a chap called Zig Ziglar from America. He's died now. He died about 5 years ago. And his phrase was, if you help enough people get what they want, you will get what you want. And, I said earlier on in the conversation that has done nothing to my business. The foundations it has created to build off is that, I go into the Esters or whatever, and, every 2 minutes, humbly, someone comes up and says, thank you. But there's one thing I've learned is this. If it wasn't for my wife, I wouldn't be here. Because it's very good getting all this, Chris, you're doing a really good job, and you're doing a really good job. And I'm down to London, and I'm meeting all the bigwigs of the industry, and people, when Russell Quirk rings you up and says, come and interview me, you fly high, and you walk through the door, and the missus says, that dishwasher's full, get the bloody thing emptied, and whilst you're at it, go and pick up the dog muck in the garden. And you can take that smile off your face, because you're just Chris in this household. And if there's one woman in this life that is, my mother's been great, I've got a great boss it's a balancing act between letting the people blowing smoke up your arse and keeping on a level playing field.
Head in the clouds but feet on the ground.
So I'm the rock in the family of the relationship of myself and wife, and she's the swamp, but she gives the level. And I think
haven't heard that expression before.
So it's really interesting that you, as a human being, if you help others, it will come back to you. And I am playing the ultimate long game. Okay, we have that weekly property show, which hardly anyone watches, yet everyone talks about it. Isn't that strange? And we're having stuff like this, and I'm enjoying. Where do I want to go? Because I think God, we're just rambling. But you told me to ramble.
Yeah.
I don't know where I don't know where the destination is, but I'm enjoying the journey.
I think that's the secret, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So I'm just enjoying it. So
So there's no particular, even sort of vague end game in mind.
What is? I don't know.
No.
But when you pick up the phone to, I've got a few irons in the fire. When I pick up the phone to the likes of, the big portals and say, I want to come and interview you, and they say, when are you coming down? But damn well I'll be frank with you. That's great. let's be honest, people want people want to make a difference in this world. People want their voice to be heard. And that's what I'm doing. Do you know what the best bit is? I'm actually teaching others to do it.
Mm-hmm. That's very much what comes across to me from your work, which is that, it's making a difference first. That's what's more important. And make a living as well, yeah, but that's not the focus.
Yeah, I'm in a lucky position where I can I can make a good living, and 3 days a week I can do this, which is my side hustle, knowing damn well that this will pay me back tenfold in 10 years or 20 years time.
Yeah.
To become the most trusted person in the estate agency, I don't know. Hey, who cares? But at the end of the day, as long as I can go on first class on the train and have a couple of beers at King's Cross.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I used to go to the Champagne Bar, but now we've actually, because I come from Lincolnshire. You come from down south, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you one of my weaknesses in life. I've got an addiction to Nando's.
I've got friends who are directors of Nando's. God, it's an extraordinary business.
Oh.
They took their whole team to Portugal for a big company party last year, and I was there. Really good friend of mine in Portugal, because we have an office in Lisbon, and a friend of mine who's there, she knows we have a mutual friend who's a director, and so we went and the Nando's party was quite something. It was just like 200 restaurant managers partying, but it's an extraordinary business.
Love it. Honestly, I'm get me 2 bottles of beer.
But do you not have any Nando's up here then?
We don't have Nando's in Lincolnshire.
I shall ring my friend.
There was a petition. We've got a new cinema opening in Grantham. We're in a boring little market town. 35,000 people, 40,000. A brand new cinema opening where the council are offering 3.5 years rent. There was a petition. My film guys call me a teenager because let's be honest, that's what teenagers ramp on about. I'm just addicted to it. Extra hot.
You had a petition to get Nando's in?
Yeah, there was a petition in Grantham.
Did they respond?
Yeah, they said no. But extra hot double chicken wraps with extra hot chicken livers. Oh. Yeah.
So every time you go to London, you drop
one
on
next to King's Cross.
Yeah, they're all
get
over
my
the
leg
place.
pulled. Yeah, that and IPA. I do love IPA.
Yeah, me too. I love IPA. So, are you a film fan as well then? Are you a cinema goer?
No. I'm quite a boring man, actually.
Well, I've got some sort of off the topic questions here as well. I wanted to ask you, do you have a favourite book or a book that you recommend the most?
I probably read about 6 books a year, and they tend to be non-fiction spies, like the Cold War.
Okay.
Yeah, not many.
All right. So, Agent Zigzag.
Yes.
It's a cracker, isn't it?
It's very good.
What an extraordinary bloke.
Indeed. No, I
don't think he had an end game.
No. I think, as I said, it is the journey. And again, coming back to estate agents is how many estate agents do you see who do this? Basically, they've been in business 30 years, but in reality, they've been in business 1 year 30 times.
Yeah. Groundhog Day.
And, it's a cross between disappointment and winding up. So I've taught with my colleagues, Chris and Matt, awesome people. I've taught over 200 agents how to do video. I've got hundreds of training videos on how to do the landlord farming technique, and it doesn't cost you a penny to do. Mm-hmm. So I tell you exactly what to do and how to do it, and you don't need my articles. All you have to do is talk about the property market and do buy-to-let deals.
Have you had feedback of people taking that free stuff and using it and getting results?
Well, no, they don't start, and then when they do start, they give up. It's like going to a gym in January and you only go twice, and then you complain in July that you haven't got the beach body. Well, put fucking work in.
I showed you a diagram before we started this recording, which is the workflow that agents have to go through for a move to happen. And I think when you look at that, there's something like 22, 23 summary steps in there. And if you're a small business with just a couple of people and you look at all that's going on, that to me is the reason why they haven't got time to. They would like to. I'll tell you a story.
No, I don't think. I think it's deeper than that. Sorry.
There may be other reasons as well.
No, I think it's deep. It's more emotional than that. People play this. People are working too much in the business, not on the business.
Yes, but not through choice. I genuinely think.
But people waste an hour and a half a day looking at funny cat videos. Okay, people waste too much. People say they haven't got enough time, but they spend on average an hour and a half a day on social media.
That's just the modern day equivalent of a fag break.
Okay, and then they basically get up at 5 in the morning and do that extra work, or the amount of again, estate agents. Let's just say there's some valuer or negotiator listening to this, wanting to be their own boss. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be frank out there. It's bloody hard work out for these youngsters to save up for a deposit. We've proved it beyond doubt that it's cheaper to buy than it is to rent.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to save the 5% deposit. The problem is we've got these bloody mobile phones that cost us 80 quid a month on a contract.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got to go out 3 times a week, and we've got to go to Ibiza twice. Back in our day, there was no mobile phones, there was no Sky package. That's 150 quid. And you didn't go on holiday and you went without. Today, people want it all now. Fair goes. I've got no problem with that. But if you are going to be an agent and you want to set up your own business and you are bored in your job being a neg or a manager, then quite simply, and I've said this in videos, but no one's doing it. I think it's fear, making the difference, putting the hard work in, or all the above, is create a personal blog about your local property market. I think people are looking for permission. If they go to their bosses saying, can I do this? Well, their boss is not going to say yes, because if they say yes and they cock it up, they can blame their boss. And if they do,
there's a lot of people listening and watching who might want to ask you the question, what stops you starting your own agency?
Fascinating question. I'm having a ball of a time teaching others.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah. Having more fun doing this.
Oh,
you've been an agent, so you know what it's like to be an agent.
I'm really nice. I've been there, done it.
Yeah.
And some people say, well, put your money where your mouth is. I purposely don't work for anyone in Grantham. I could be in the future, I could be interested in doing something in Grantham, but my wife is concerned that I'll get sucked in.
I'm going to disagree with you on this point about how agents spend their time. I'll tell you why. I think you've been an agent, and I think that actually skews your view. Like, you started off in a big corporate, Halifax.
Yes. I've worked for independents.
Belvoir.
Yeah.
You have worked for independents as well.
Yes.
I spent the last 20 years, when I read books about running businesses, okay, what it always comes down to is, as the owner of a business, the only resource you have is your time, and how you choose to use your time will actually determine.
Is this working smarter, not harder?
That's a clumsy simplification of what I'm talking about, right? Because there are multiple different layers of value of time, and I think the way I think about it is, you can do a job that's worth 1 unit of value. Next layer up is 10 units. Next layer up, it's 100 units, 1,000, and so on.
Yes.
And what
it's like branch managers doing their accounts, or branch managers doing tenants disputes.
An hour doing a valuation versus an hour doing a viewing. Which one's more valuable to a business?
Okay, the valuation.
Right. So, but the point is, the sheer number of steps, of tasks, of processes, of phone calls, of letters, of emails, of viewings, of solicitors involved in every single move is so overwhelming, truly overwhelming, that I've consulted some agents. I've got really close on how they run their businesses, and I've helped them try to manage their time better. And by doing that, I've actually realized that it's almost impossible, and for one reason which other industries don't suffer from. Okay, I've watched owners of agencies try to manage their time and try to sort out time, and I've seen some amazingly effective examples of this. And what I discovered is that if you are an owner-manager who is also customer-facing, your customers just chuck a coach and horses through your plans of managing your day. Because when they call you, they want your time right there and then.
Too right.
Okay? And the moment that you've spent time planning out your day or your week, that happens and it all goes to shit. So,
because we end up as bosses firefighting, don't we? And we need good systems that take out the mundane crap out of our day.
But this is a bit of a story, but let me tell it, because I think it's important. To me, this is actually one of the biggest insights I've got from objectively and impartially watching how agencies run. When my best mate I referred to right at the beginning of this talk, who was working at Foxtons, he went to manage their Notting Hill office. And this is in the 90s. They had 30 staff. He was 23 years old. He was the youngest manager, most successful office. And John Hunt, who was the owner of Foxtons at the time, brought in a chap called Peter Tobin, who was a consultant and a manager. Up until that point, Foxtons did viewings any old time. One of the steps this guy brought in was when my mate was working there as a manager, and he couldn't stand it, was from Monday onwards, Foxtons never does viewings in the morning again. You only do viewings after lunch. In the mornings, everyone is at their desks on the phone.
Yeah, I can remember that.
Right? And I can remember my mate going, we're already smashing it. We're already doing so much money. I don't know why they're doing this. It works. Why, it ain't broke.
Yeah.
We don't need to fix it. And I remember him, he said to me, 6 months later, with no extra staff, we had doubled our sales figures. Doubled our sales figures. Just by using time better. Now, in larger organizations where you've got support staff and you've got a hierarchy of people, it's easier to distribute the value tasks to the appropriate person that's in. But if you're a small one-man band or two or three, you don't have that luxury. You've got to do everything. Your sleeves rolled up. You're cleaning out the drains, as well as welcoming people in the shop front door. So the smaller you are as an agent, the harder your time management challenges are. And your time is all you've got. Your time is what you're selling.
Yes.
Okay. Now, one of the products that I sold was an optional add-on to my software system, Easy Match, was something called Tracker. And what Tracker would do is we charge an extra subscription for this each month. And what it would do is it would let an agent input all the properties that are on the market with other agents in their town. And whenever a property went under offer, had a price drop, or came back on the market, it would instantly trigger an email and a text message to the vendor of that property, if they had their details, that looked like it had come from the branch manager personally. So look, so Chris, I've just seen you drop your price today. We've got some buyers. I'd love to talk to you if you're thinking about moving an agent, right? And this was just like sniper marketing. It worked beautifully. And we also generated automatic reports that showed exactly how many of your deals originated from this facility.
Yes.
And one of our biggest clients, so one of the clients that got the most benefit out of it, they saw a 40% increase in their whole business on the back of this single function. Now,
well, this is
other
clever,
agents,
this is clever systemization, isn't it?
But what happened was that agent was the first one to use it. And what they did is he said, that's going to take some time. I'm going to hire someone whose sole job it will be to keep because they have to put the properties in first. Once they're in there, the system does it automatically. It tracks what happens automatically. But he said, every time an applicant registers that's got a property on the market with someone else, we need to make sure it goes into this tracker function. And we had other agents that signed up and were paying for it, and they weren't using it. And I couldn't understand it. And I would go and see them and say, guys, you're paying us every month for this, and it's sitting there dormant. There's nothing in there. Oh, no, we know. We really need to. Look, can you help us get our staff to do it? And so we would work with them to implement strategies of doing it. And so in other words, the managers would try. They would say, look, I want to use it because I can see it's absolute genius. And the end result conclusion that we came to, and to this day, there are people still paying for it that aren't using it because they want to use it. It's like a gym membership, right? Was that if it's a business...
Yes, it's funny because the wife's going to some Pilates, and she has to pay whether she goes, and she's on 2 for a holiday, and she's not moaning like hell.
Yeah. But these agents are like, I know it works, I want to use it, I will use it, and then they're like, I didn't use it. And I'd say, why?
So what's the solution?
And they'd say...
Do it for them?
No, they would just say, the truthful answer is, we are constantly being consumed by more urgent tasks and never get round to doing that because it's never urgent. It's never high priority. It's important, but it's not urgent. And the urgent stuff... I like
where you're going with this.
The urgent stuff just takes our time away from that.
So what's the solution?
Well, I mean, the solution, the only ones that get value from it are the ones who have made it as much a part of their day as getting up in the morning.
So,
right?
So if it's planned, it's done.
And they've understood that. Having used it for a while, not got anything out of it, they've gone, right, we've either got to use this or not.
Do you think we are good people, estate agents are good at selling houses, but we're not very good business people?
I would reword it slightly. I'd say that the good agents are great at selling houses, but as a business, it is unlike any other business to run. It is completely unlike it in every way. It is the only industry where you work for free, and if you're lucky, you get paid at the end. That's one that makes it unique, and the dynamics unique. Number two, it is the only industry which makes its living from brokering a high-value transaction between two emotional and therefore irrational parties. So you've got 6 months' work getting a deal, right? It's almost at the point of completion, and then they fall out over the shower.
Yes.
And your fee is gone in smoke, right? Name another industry that's anything like that. There isn't one. It doesn't exist. Lawyers, they get their money up front. No one else doesn't get paid, right? Agents don't get paid. So it is, and this is why people don't understand it. They think it's a business. It's just a business. It is not. It is a completely unique business.
I would say it's a way of life.
Yeah, and for me,
like being a publican or being in the forces.
I think I think estate agents are in many ways the unsung heroes of society. I think they have the most unfair reputation of any industry.
Especially the guys on the front line that are basically trying to pay the wages of their staff, firefight all the issues with them, and then deal with Mrs. Miggins and her.
And what the public needs to tell itself, right, when they get what they perceive to be bad experience, they need to remind themselves that nobody does a bad job on purpose. And you may not understand the reasons why things haven't worked out, but as often as not, it'll be your fault, the client, not the agent, but you'll never admit that to yourself. And other times, there may be genuine reasons why they haven't been able to do what you've asked, and it's beyond their control. But they can't say that, and they won't say that to you. And you know, I started out in this industry thinking we can cut agents out. The internet's here.
Can't.
And I learned.
Do you think that's why the likes of Purple Bricks and the online boys will never take hold in the 30, 40, 50% that they were planning to?
What I find fascinating about this, because I met Russell Quirk after you'd interviewed him, when he and I had a beer in Soho, a couple of hours, we had a good old chat. What I find fascinating is that people like Russell, who've come from agency and who know agency, once you get away from the coalface, you actually, I think, Savills investing into Yopa, LSL investing into Yopa, Connell's investing into Hatch, right? The thing that completely baffles me is how all of these people running successful traditional agencies have invested tens of millions into these other businesses. How can they not know that wasn't going to work? Because to me, as an impartial observer, the mathematics don't stack up. The work involved in getting a property sold costs more than £1,000
because they were caught up in the whirlwind of.
Well,
14,
to me,
15, 16.
I had no reason. I mean, Purple Bricks lied in their adverts. That pissed me off, right? And I made that very public. But other than that, I had nothing against online agency. I just never thought it was a good idea. But you know, it is the most misunderstood business. The one problem I have with the idea of agents talking about their market and making that the story that they tell to get attention is that it isn't telling the story of what they do. And this is why the public still doesn't understand what agents do. So my final question to you, I think we've been going for a couple of hours now.
Have we?
My final question to you is this. If you could only give someone 3 tips, someone starting their own business, right? Because I think 2019 is going to see a very large number of new small businesses, one-man bands starting up with low overheads, right? With no offices, with no fixed overhead, or very, very low fixed overheads, intelligent use of the new tech that's out there, but who want to give full service, right? You can give 3 tips, just 3, no more, 3 short, preferably single sentences of advice to someone starting their own estate or lettings business as a one-man band, one-woman band. What would those 3 tips be?
Bloody hell.
I mean, even if there's just one.
Make sure that you've got all your ducks in a row with regard to the backroom systems, that you can ensure that when business pours in through the funnel, it gets sorted out.
Right. So have your processes in place.
Processes, systemizations, the right thing. Pay for the right thing, and not the amount of people that will pay hundreds of pounds a month for a CRM. They buy a Lamborghini, but they only use it as a Fiesta.
But that's because some people only need a Fiesta, but no one is selling Fiestas.
No, they're not.
That's what I'm hoping to solve with BestAgent.
Yes. The second thing is your job as an agent. You need to market yourself, and what you have to do is talk about the things that interest your potential clients. We have been given such a powerful tool with social media, and coming to your point is you need to talk. So the things that interest homeowners and landlords is one is definitely the local property market, because people are interested in the local property market.
Yeah.
But something that I'm testing at the moment is I'm actually interviewing vendors of people who have used another agent and their journey of why they didn't get on with the other agent and how the other agent helped and the processes involved, and let the vendors tell your story. Don't you tell your story. So that's another thing. And then finally, you have a responsibility to yourself to put food on the table, and therefore you have to go hunting for the business.
Yeah.
But the longer you can, the more you can play the long game, the better you will win.
Yeah.
So there you go. There's the three. I don't know if they're right.
All right.
I don't know anything.
That was deeply insightful, very intimate, fascinating, enjoyable.
Well, I only came to see Bingo the dog, really. Obviously Sam as well, but you know.
I'm really very grateful to you.
Thank you. It was good fun.
It was great
tables to be turned.
Yeah. It was fascinating. I that was a lot more than I bargained for, really, honestly.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you very much, and all the best.
Thank you.
All right.